He's there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We're good to go, Louis.
All right, Steve, take it away.
All right, let's try again. We'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is, I guess, the next hearing. I'm going down through our agenda here. Let's take a minute here before we get into the meeting and just say, if anybody wants to say anything about Danny Paulmore, that's a shame. We're all, I know, very sad about that. She was a lovely lady, and she was a pleasure to have on our group here. She was always constructive and well prepared and so on. So from my standpoint, I know we will all miss seeing her and working with her. So does anybody else have anything in particular they want to say? I know Otto and I spoke a little bit yesterday, and so.
Steve, I expressed everybody's condolences and well wishes at her funeral yesterday, and the family appreciated it. And for those of you that didn't know Danny for a long time, I mean, I knew Danny from back in the Celeste days, and when we were really working hard in this community to do voter registration and turn out the vote. And she made a tremendous contribution with that. And for the growth of Columbus over the years, she did make a terrific contribution. So I appreciate all of your well wishes. And as I stated, I conveyed them all to the family yesterday at the funeral.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you were able to be there, Otto. That's wonderful. And I saw also she was recognized at City Council last night. And, some nice things were said. And Louis, you put together, I think, a very nice few paragraphs about her that expressed our kind of group sentiment. What are we doing with that?
Let me go ahead and read it, I guess. So I put this together on behalf of the city. The mayor took a look at it and he agreed with it. So I'll read it on behalf of the city. So Danny Palmore passed away on January 15th, 2021. She was a mother, a community organizer, and a businesswoman who provided 12 years of service to the Downtown Commission. She was the president and CEO of PolicyWorks and had over 30 years of experience as a political consultant and campaign manager for local and national candidates and issues. Many individuals in the city will remember her as a mentor, as well as for her efforts to increase voter registration and public participation in local and national elections. As a downtown resident, she had the opportunity to see and experience the many changes which have taken place in our metropolitan area. And in her own words, she said that she was heartened that these changes not only included the many new structures that have emerged, but also the vibrancy and inclusion of so many of our city's residents who have begun to think of downtown as a destination to work and play. Her insight, kindness, and passion for improving our city and community will be missed by all, especially by her fellow commissioners and city staff. She is survived by her two children, Seth Clark and Erica Clark Jones. So that's what I put together. And, you know, I was only on the commission. I've only been on the commission for a year, but Danny was always very kind and very nice. And we spoke multiple times and, you know, she'll be missed.
Yes, she will be.
Yeah.
Louis, that's beautiful. Well done.
That's very nicely done. Why don't we kind of pass some unanimous vote to send this on to the mayor's office and city council? Could we have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
And there are numbers of seconds. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
That's those opposed. That's unanimous. So
actually, Steve,
yes.
I hate to interrupt. We haven't taken roll yet. So if we could take roll first and then I could take that vote.
Absolutely. Let's go.
Steve Whitman,
Here.
Otto Beatty,
Here.
Mike Lusk,
Here.
Bob Loversige,
Here?
Jana,
Here?
Ed,
Here.
Tony.
Yep, here.
We have a quorum. Can we go ahead and have that vote, please?
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? That passes unanimously, Louis. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping me in line too.
That's okay.
It's not easy.
Yeah, that's what my mother used to say too. So, okay. Next up, let's swear in the staff if we could. Would all those here from the city of Columbus please raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So say I do.
I do.
And that's Louis. Anybody else? Okay. Next meeting is February 23rd at 8:30 a.m. Going out of roll. Okay. I'm not going to go over the overview of the hearing format because I think everybody's familiar with that. I'm going to step in if, and then the meeting, the minutes from the last meeting, everybody have a chance to look at those?
Yes, I move approval.
Okay, there's a motion to approve. Second. Are there any questions, comments, additions, deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approval. Those opposed? Okay, the minutes of the previous meeting are approved. If we can step in for just a second, we have one case up. Has everybody looked at it, 84 to 88 North 4th Street?
Yes.
Yes.
Is the applicant present?
Yes, I'm here. Tom Morano.
Okay, Tom, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So say I do.
I do.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Tom? These are basically the same buildings. Is that correct, Tom? Is the one that you built one house removed from this to the north?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have materials and colors from you as well?
Well, actually, this application is really conceptual approval for the two home sites. What I'm hoping to get is approval to demolish the existing two-story brick structure
Okay.
currently on the lot.
So,
Are you guys going to go ahead and build this thing?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Are you going to build it? You know, we have a standing policy. We don't like to tear something down unless something's going to take its place.
Yes, we're going to build the two home sites, the two homes on the lot that the Albers Law Building is on.
So, Steve, can you just let me read the staff report real quick? And I did a site visit as well. I can show you what's there existing.
Okay.
Okay, so they're proposing to construct a pair of 3-story single-family homes with alley-facing detached garages. The design of the houses is nearly identical to the single-family house at 96 North 5th Street, which was approved at the May 2020 meeting. The development will result in the demolition of a 2-story office building, as well as its adjacent parking lot and landscaping. The 1980s office building does not meet the guidelines with regards to site design, parking, and building setbacks. Guidelines state that the commission should consider whether demolition of existing structures allows for new development, which is of greater significance to the character of the surrounding area. And new development should promote good design, long-lasting building construction and materials. The proposal generally meets the guidelines with regards to building design, context, setbacks, and materials. Here is the site location, right behind Bishop's Walk, I believe it is.
Yes.
And then let me pull up the site visit pictures. Just a moment here, they're loading. There we go. So here's the building. As you can see, it's from the 1980s, according to the auditor. It's not a bad building, but it's set back from the property lines. It's got parking out in front. It does have this landscaping buffering in the parking lot. Here's a close-up of the building. Entryway. Here it is from the rear. It's got parking in the rear as well. Here it is how it addresses the alley. Here it is next to the existing structure. Here's the neighbor property. This is an existing building, I believe from the 1800s that has survived somehow over the last century or more. And here it is. the neighboring property. And here's kind of a street view to show you what it would look like. So they're proposing the 2 buildings to be built up to the street front. And I can pull up the packet right now that they provided. So here we go. That's it for me.
So, Tom, why is this a conceptual review? Why isn't it a final review?
Because we're not finished with the CDs for those 2 homes.
Okay.
I mean, if the commission feels that there's enough information here to final those 2 homes, I would gladly accept a final approval.
Well, it's pretty similar to the one at 96, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, very similar. And we have a potential buyer for the 84, which is why we're trying to get moving on this fairly quickly, is so that they prefer to have that. And
I mean, what's not to like about 2 more single-family houses downtown, right?
I agree.
But what I don't like is tearing down an existing building based on conceptual design.
Well, what if we, I got to tell you, I conversed momentarily with Lewis about the idea of just approving this administratively, because literally it's the same house that we have at 96.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, I don't want to do that. So you're looking at it. But what we could do is we could approve these, Tom, and then if for some reason you decided you needed to come back, I guess we could start over with something else. And like the house we did just to the east here on the other side of the block, catty corner there.
Sure.
You came back with a couple renditions on that one. Does anybody have a problem with kind of moving in that direction?
No.
Sounds good.
Have reasonable or
I'm good.
anybody?
We need to approve this. I just don't like. I want to be careful of the precedent. That's all. I mean, we know that Tom is going to come back and build these houses, but we don't know the next applicant that comes in that gives us this song and dance about how I have to tear down the building first.
Right.
Is there any way to tie the
these?
demolition?
I'm sorry.
Pardon? Is there any way to tie the demolition permit into the building permit? Is there going to be a gap in time, Tom, between the demolition and the new construction?
No, because our potential buyer for the 84 wants to get moving as soon as possible. So as soon as we take the building down, our goal is to start building these 2 new homes. I was planning on just coming back next month for final.
So you'd end up coming back, you'd tear it down this month or something, and then you'd come back next month with a final approval. Is that the idea?
Yes.
I think Bob is on board here. I don't know why we wouldn't just approve these, and then if he goes ahead and builds these, he's all set. If he wants to change it, he gets to come back next month.
Perfect.
That sounds good.
Does that
I think it's fine.
anybody a problem?
Yes.
Can I have a
No, I mean, there's plenty of detail in the submittal, particularly since we have the house down the street. I think I'd more comfortable with the final approval.
Can you make a motion to that effect, please?
Yeah, I move first. I move that we change this application from conceptual to final, and that we approve it as submitted.
Okay, including the demolition.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, including
For both houses. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any other questions, comments, motions on the floor?
I just had one comment.
Okay.
I know that you're probably still developing the details, and I'm wondering, because each one is identical or pretty much identical in the details except for the color, maybe there's an opportunity to vary the details slightly to give it a little bit more individuality. That's just a thought as you're developing, let's say, the ocular window or some of the other entry details or something like that.
Yeah, porch details looks a little.
I agree, and I would probably do that. At least window grid patterns, or maybe some window shapes, maybe group 3 together to make a bay.
Right, because you really excel. I mean, you do beautiful work, and one thing you excel at so much is creating the character that defines the downtown and gives it depth. So I think there's an opportunity here.
Thank you.
Tom, you can come. That's an invitation to come back if you want to tweak it.
Can do.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, let's move on here. Kevin Wheeler. Kevin, thank you for being here today. This looks good.
Yeah.
And Kevin,
Hi,
sorry
Kevin.
to, hope we didn't
Hi,
hold you up
everybody.
too much here.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Lewis or Nolan, whenever, am I able to share my screen now?
Yep.
I'm seeing your package.
Okay. You all seeing the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. It's good to be with you all. Like the rest of you, I was really so sorry to hear about Danny, and appreciate the fact that you guys took the steps you took. We, as many of you may know, her daughter, Erica, worked for the city for a long time. Particularly, my involvement with her particularly was around the Celebrate One program. So, thinking about her in particular. So, I've been, Tony Celebrezzi from the Building and Zoning Services Department and I have been visiting commissions sponsored by the city or staffed by the city. So, area commissions, major civics, groups like yours, to give folks a heads up about the zoning code update work that we've just recently begun. And in some ways, downtown is a little bit of an outlier because, you all have received, or have benefited rather from a pretty current code. It was updated in 2014, and I spent a lot of quality time with many of you en route to that. But the rest of the city hasn't had a comprehensive update to the zoning code since the 1950s. Most of what you see in the code is newer than that. We've had ongoing updates, new districts and edits to existing districts, but it hasn't really benefited from a take stock, where are we trying to go as a city review in a long time. So this is the effort that we've recently begun, and I'm just going to share some news. I want to share it with you, recognizing that while it may have less direct impact on the downtown district, many of you play roles that extend beyond downtown and have an interest in the city more broadly. So we wanted you to be aware of it and know how you can get involved. So you understand zoning and what it does and the fact that it's different than policy. And we think of it as a pretty powerful tool for encouraging and facilitating investment. Zoning in many cases, many places, has been used to exclude people. And that's something that isn't, is not unknown in Central Ohio. And it builds, unfortunately, on a history of things like redlining and restrictive covenants. And so that's one of the things that has maybe not been so positive about zoning. And again, as I indicated earlier, we haven't updated the code in a comprehensive way since the 50s. One of the reasons that the timing is so, I think, ripe for reviewing the code is that really the city's growth patterns have been evolving now for some time, and the future really looks quite a bit different than the past. So the chart on the left is showing what we have annexed by decade since 1950 when our annexation policy was put in place. And that's connected to the fact that the city controls the water and sewer system that most of our suburban partners use. And we started out at 40 square miles in 1950, and today we're 220 square miles. But you also see that in the past couple decades, the 2000s, between 2000 and 2010, and then certainly in the teens, our growth territorially has dropped pretty dramatically. And this just reflects the reality of a changed region. We've in every direction on the compass, there are reasons why the city really is no longer in a position to grow territorially the way we did in the past. We will continue to see annexation. It'll just be more, a lot of it will be infill, pockets of township. A lot of it will be sort of incremental filling out of spaces. On the other hand, on the right, you have population by decade. That's about as straight a line increase as a community might anticipate. And the last three bars are reflecting the next 30 years as projected by the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. In the past 30 years, we grew by 300,000 people. And I've worked for the city for over 30 years. So, that's a pretty dramatic increase. That's a 50% increase in size for just the city. And so the next 30 years, we're expecting to do that again. And the thing about projections is that they're always wrong. It's just a question of how long are they. But we have a reason to believe that we're going to continue to see, we have a reason to frankly hope that we continue to see population growth because of what that means to the health of our region and our economy. As we look at the growth trends, the things that we see are, of course, again, more infill development and redevelopment. You guys have had a front row seat to that. Rising housing costs and inadequate supply. This is something that has been increasingly on the minds of the mayor and council members. The Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission just completed a study that really gets at that in a closer way, where our gaps are in housing and perhaps how we might better as a region strategize to address those gaps. Lack of transportation options. If you live on one of CODA's principal lines, you have some choices, but we still remain a predominantly car-oriented city. And that's something that as we get denser, as we sort of go from a teenager city to a more mature city in some ways, we're going to need more transportation options. Demand for multifamily, smaller homes, smaller lots. We're an aging population. Our household size in terms of people is smaller. And so there's a desire for for smaller units, less upkeep. This doesn't mean that single family detached homes are going away as a market element or segment. It just means that it's less of a force than it has been in the past. And then, downtown is nothing if not walkable. And people want that. They want to be able to walk and do things. And I think the pandemic has demonstrated that, it's really nice just to be able to get outside and see things. And then finally, not all neighborhoods have prospered in this past 20 years of evolving growth patterns. We still have neighborhoods in the city that are right next to very affluent neighborhoods that have struggled with this investment and all sorts of challenges associated with that. So we're asking these questions about how will we grow as a city, where will people live and work, how are we going to get around, what will our neighborhoods look like, and how will we build opportunity for our residents. And I think, some of you know that when I left the planning division a couple of years ago, my whole role has been focused on growth policy. And so I've worked with public utilities around water and sewer and annexation. I've worked with the public service department around transit in conjunction with CODA and others. And then working with building and zoning services on this effort. So we do have work underway. Some of you are familiar with Blink Us, and that's an effort to look at how the region can move forward with improved transit options. I mentioned the housing study that Morpsey recently completed, and our public utilities department is hosting the Sustainable Columbus program that's looking at how we can adapt some of our policies and programs to be more sustainable environmentally. And then the zoning code, how can we position it for the future? Areas that we know we want to look at with the code, again, accommodating growth, affordable housing. We want to be understanding how we can use the zoning code to promote equity. We have gotten to a point where we have more council variances than rezonings, so we rely on variances in a way that is not ideal. That really tells us that there's some underlying issues with the code. We know that it's critical to protect job centers, and that's something that not only for the economy with respect to the individual household, but the city and region broadly is super critical. Overlays and special districts, those have been really important for the city. But again, like variances, when every commercial corridor has a commercial overlay, it begins to suggest that maybe attention is needed in the underlying districts. We'll be looking at the public review process. We'll be looking at how design guidelines might be helpful in the broader code. And we will be looking at things like how to support transit. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just the kind of thing that we know we want to take a look at. Okay.
Hey, Kevin, if we have a
Sure.
couple questions along the way, do you want us to wait to the end or just kind of?
If that's okay, I'm
Sure.
having trouble
Yeah,
right
absolutely.
now.
Go ahead.
I'm having a little bit of trouble right now moving my screen. So let's see here. This hasn't happened yet. So
We've lost your picture too, Kevin.
Okay.
Kevin, can you see us?
You're frozen. I'm gonna get
Now
right
Kevin's
back.
back.
I'm gonna leave and then I'll be right back in. I'll be 1
Okay.
second. I think that this is.
Hey, Lois, is Kevin doing this as a consultant? Is he no longer?
No, he's with the city.
He's with the city. Yeah,
He's still with the city. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
He's no longer in the planning division.
Right.
But he's now the assistant director for growth policy.
Okay.
Still seeing the orange triangle of doom on the screen.
Nolan, next time he wants to leave, don't let him.
Something's happening.
Mr. Chairman,
He just got up and left.
I don't think it was because of you, Otto.
could I ask a question? And if this is not a good time, or either if somebody wants to tell me about this privately, but I've had a couple people from outside the city ask me about this new requirement about shadowing or not blocking the sun if another building is going to be built in downtown Columbus. And I wanted to know where to get some information about that.
That's a good question. I'd have to look into that for you.
Sorry about that, everybody.
But you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to hold us up, but I've had a couple of people ask me about that.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know that we have any regulations for that in place, but I can check with Building and Zoning Services and get back to you on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Kevin? Well, there must be something out there because a couple of people from outside the city asked me about it.
And this is something new, Otto?
That you cannot build a building so tall in Columbus that it casts a shadow. Now, maybe they're wrong.
Maybe it's just a question about whether, in fact, there is that kind of ordinance.
Or something must have brought it up.
It seems like the type of thing you might find in our guidelines. I don't know that it's there, but it seems like a place you may address something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll follow through on it privately. Because someone outside the city just asked me about it.
Okay.
Okay. I think I'll look into that. Kevin, are you back, Kevin?
I am. Can you
Okay.
see a slide that says phase one?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for your patience. I'm sorry about that. I just lost connection. So we're almost done. And the danger of putting me on it after the business is that I take longer. So anyway,
Now you tell us.
right. Phase one is where we're at now. And because updating a code for the city of Columbus or a city of its size is such a complex thing, you need to do a little bit of reconnaissance before you launch into it in earnest. And so this is a process where we brought on board a consultant team headed by Lisa Wise Consulting. They're working with Opticos. Opticos is a company that's sort of known for their work in the missing middle, which is kind of the housing strategies that cities use between single family and big apartment complexes. It's kind of everything in between. They're also working locally with MKSK and Warhol and Wall Street, as well as Peter Park. And Peter Park is a former planning director of Milwaukee and Denver, and in both cities he led the successful updates of their zoning code. So it's a great team, but their job is really just to look at our current code and our process and help us understand sort of what's working and what isn't working, and then most importantly, kind of help us establish the priorities for phase two, which is really when we will begin to do the work in earnest. And that's scheduled, phase one scheduled to go through through the summer. And then this fall, we're hoping to kick off phase two. One of the things that we're doing in the midst of this early process is just finding ways to reach out to folks. We had the consultant team interview about 45 external folks. They interviewed each council member and the mayor, as well as a lot of city staff to kind of get some initial readings. We've established a website and a survey. You're all going to be getting an email that invites you to fill out the survey, check out the website. The website is as sophisticated a design as all city websites. It's pretty basic at this stage. But you have an opportunity to sign up for future updates. I really hope you'll fill out the survey and feel free to forward that email and encourage others to do it. The website, again, is if you get to columbus.gov, then it's /zoning update. And you're going to get this link, so you don't need to take this information down if you don't want. But that's kind of where we're at. We just wanted you to be aware of it, let you know how you can track it. A lot of what you're going to be hearing about it is going to begin with phase two. But I think one of the things that's important to us is that traditionally in the zoning and development process, we hear from the applicant, we hear from folks who may be opposed to a case in some instances. What we don't hear from a lot is sort of the broader community. And so we're trying to find ways to connect to a broader constituency than we might traditionally hear from as we move really particularly into phase two. And that's particularly, I would say, African-American community, lower income folks, just people who, because of the nature of how public outreach works, don't necessarily have the opportunity to engage. And so that's going to be one of the things that we're thinking about as we move forward too. So I'm going to stop. That's it. If you have questions, I'll do my best now. And if not, that's okay too. I won't be offended.
I had a couple of quick questions. One, there was a mention there in one of the previous slides about job centers. Tell me what that means and how that feeds into a zoning situation.
So, sure. So what we think about, when we do our land use plans in the city, one of the things that we always look for are areas that are pretty rich either in current jobs or potential job centers. And that could be industrial, distribution, warehousing, it could be office, it can be a whole host of things. And in those instances, we have really tried to work at protecting those areas for additional job-oriented uses. And a good example might be where at the southeast quadrant of Hilliard Grove Road and I-70 West, we have a lot of warehouse distribution, light manufacturing kinds of uses. And there was a proposal for some multifamily kind of in the midst of that. And that's a case where, you know, we need to be willing to ask the question, well, what's the opportunity cost here from the longer term perspective? If you allow a use that might be a challenge for adjacent uses, are you undercutting your ability to kind of protect that location for jobs? I think in an area like downtown, it's a much more nuanced thing, because downtown is just really identified as being mixed use, obviously. So, you know, the beauty is you can have office, retail, and residential in the same building.
Okay. My other question was kind of a more general question, and that is, when you're coming in to see us with this thing, is there something that is in the downtown situation that you've got in the back of your mind that that with respect to zoning code changes would be something that we would be focused on downtown then?
You know, to be honest, again, I think that because your code is kind of self-contained and relatively new, we have not felt that we needed to put the priority on downtown that we're putting on the rest of the city. That doesn't mean that if you have thoughts that you'd like to share with us about downtown specifically, that we don't want to hear them. It also is the case that if you have observations about how things have worked positively in downtown, you know, that may be helpful to hear if you have ideas about how that could be applied more broadly. I think one of the things I'll be candid about that we've struggled with is that design review, which, you know, is what we do with this commission, has real power to navigate development proposals and come up with solutions that really are additive to our urban fabric. It's also the case that it's a really difficult thing to sustain, broadly speaking. It's
citywide
staff and
yeah. I don't even know how you would possibly do that.
Right. It's just not realistic to do this kind of thing on a broad scale. So I think one of the questions that we're going to be wrestling with is, how can we design a code that is more flexible, doesn't require as many variances, doesn't require as many hoops from a regulatory perspective, allows for flexibility, but at the same time, frankly, guides folks or provides confidence to the community that design will be something that is sort of a focus of the project. So if you are a community person today, you look at the fact that many projects, almost every central city project needs a variance. You look at that as your opportunity to speak to a project. And in many cases, it may just be a parking variance. And all of a sudden, the parking variance becomes the means through which the entire project is debated. I think what we would hope to see as we move forward is a scenario where you don't have to do that all the time. You don't have to have a variance for every project, but you do have, frankly, more of an emphasis on design. So
I think that's right. You know, the 1950 zoning has resulted in some bad things, right? At least the things we think of as bad now. And updating that code so that every project doesn't have to go to council or doesn't have to have a variance seems like a really good goal. As long as it, as you said, is flexible enough to accommodate creativity.
I have
I think the
I have a
pitfall in
question.
that, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I have a question and a comment. But did you want to say something first, Steve? Or
Well, just along the lines of what
oh, yeah, go ahead.
just talking about with respect to design. I mean, the way you let people do more things without having variances on everything is, of course, you lower some of the bars and you make it less restrictive and some of that. And of course, the pitfall in that is you're going to get people who will take advantage of that and dumb down projects. I mean, what we've done is we kind of hold we hold people's feet to the fire on some of the things, and we say, look, we want better windows, better materials, and we kind of have a little hammer to do that with. And some of the stuff you see going on out there, some of the housing is I mean, it's not going to look good in 15 or 20 years with all due respect. So it's going to be an interesting thing to see how you wade your way through that one. Janet?
Yeah, I just had a question and a comment. So the comment is that I think it's really an excellent idea to engage the community, part of the community that you feel usually doesn't have a say in the planning and in the development. And I think in doing that, it's important to really make that accessible for that population, for them to understand, that they really can have a role and, engage them in a way where they really feel they can participate and answer the questions or whatever questionnaire or whatever you have, where they can really feel, yes, I can relate to this, and this is something that pertains to my life, and I can make the connections with this. And then I think there'd be motivation to really participate and feel that they're a part of it. And my question is, when you talk about more affordable housing and that is an issue in downtown, do you see a particular type of housing, that style, that you feel is the direction that this might go in? Or do you feel that it will be a variety of, let's say, denser housing, or like things that are lower, let's say like townhouse style, and maybe higher density, a combination? Or do you see one type of housing that really is coming to the forefront of what you think would be the future?
I didn't mean to, if I said downtown, I guess I didn't mean to single out downtown. I think that our general sense is that affordable housing is needed across the city. And at this point, I think that we're not at a strategy or solutions stage necessarily. We're sort of more at a, one of the things, if you go through the survey, you're going to add, the first portion of it is going to ask you to share how important you think some broader objectives are in the update of the code. One of them is affordable housing. I think that what we want to do is sort of emerge from this survey process, this sort of searching process in phase one, and with a sense of, how much of a priority do folks think that should be with the zoning code? And then based on that, look at ways in which the zoning code can have any influence on that. One of the things, and this is just stuff that communities look at, Austin recently passed a piece of an ordinance which provided for, gave greater height, lower parking requirements for affordable projects, so that's an incentive-based approach. And communities have done that. I think, really what you're going to see throughout the city is a receptivity to a lot of different kinds of housing projects from an affordability perspective. And, Link Us is another project. It's again, the work that the city's doing with CODA, MORPC, and others to consider whether there are ways to improve transit in Central Ohio. Indianapolis recently launched something called the Red Line. It's a bus rapid transit system that runs, at least 50% of it runs on dedicated right-of-way, which means that these tandem buses, they're articulated in the middle, stop less frequently than a normal bus, and they have their own lane. You can't drive in it. So they, it's an interesting approach that a lot of cities are taking. So we'll look at things like that. And, we consider the combination of transportation and housing so important, because if you give people access to jobs, education, healthcare, and housing choices, and you can take one car out of a two-car household, that's a huge advantage. So all this is sort of being looked at together.
That sounds
I have
great.
a question, Kevin.
Any other questions,
Sure.
Tony?
Yeah, I do. Hey, Kevin, how you doing, man?
Hey.
when you get through the end of this process, how do you see the design review evolving or changing in terms of the process?
Yeah, Tony, I don't know. I think that what we've done is sort of come into this process recognizing that a lot of communities would like to see design review. The city's been approached by a number of neighborhoods. And, you know, as you all are aware that we have historic commissions, we have 5. We have design review happening in the East Franklinton area and in the core portion of the University District. So that's 5, 6, 7, that's 8 design review commissions of one sort or another. You all have various elements. Again, that's not something that we can replicate. So one of the things that we are going to be asking the consultant to do is help us consider whether there are alternative approaches that we should be pursuing and the ways in which zoning has been used in other cities to address design. Certainly form-based code, for some of you who may be familiar with that, you know, is something that some cities use. It sort of helps to, you know, it basically does what it sounds like it does. It sort of helps to direct the kind of major elements of design that are critical. However, that's a pretty staff-intensive thing to do as well. So, you know, what can we do that, again, gives the neighborhood confidence that new projects will be done well, but also allows for the flexibility that, you know, frankly, is pretty important in a central city context where nothing is standard in terms of lot size and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, good. You may. Yeah, I mean, if you you know, I'm very excited about the interest and support City Council has for this and the mayor has for this. The uniform interest and desire to see this move forward. You know, to be honest with you, we're still in the happy portion of it. You know, things are going to get hard. You know, they'll get hard, and you know, you see me on a park bench with my you know, my head in my hand. You know, it's probably the zoning code. But you know, this is a once in a lifetime chance to do this, and so we're going to give it our best shot.
Well, thank you for bringing it to us, and that's good for us to. I love being able to get a kind of a look up front because it gives us all a chance to think about it. So that's good.
Yeah, you'll get the email in the next day or two, and so fill that out. If you have someone you want to, you know, forward it to, please do. Yesterday it went out to all the area commissions and civics. We'll be sending out to organizations, private sector folks, just a lot of people. So, you know, apologies if you get it 7 times, but we'd rather you got it many times than not get it. So look out for that. And if I have one quick thing, I don't get to see Bob Loveridge very often, and I wanted to know that I happened to drive through Somerset, Ohio in the fall. And Somerset, Ohio is this little town east of Columbus. It's sort of halfway between Lancaster and Zanesville. And it's got this beautiful downtown. And I said, what's going on in this tiny little town? This is gorgeous. And I looked it up, and here Bob Loveridge is on their design review commission. So Bob, you know, that I just wanted you to know how much I appreciated that.
Oh, that's great.
Well, thank you. It's a wonderful little town. It's 1,500 people. It's been 1,500 people since before the Civil War.
Wow.
It has no sprawl, and the downtown, you know, looks like it's relatively intact, and they're working really hard to improve it. So if you ever get a chance to just take a drive through there, it's well worth it.
Yeah,
very good.
Downtown Commission expanding its reach.
There you go. There you go. Okay, Kevin, thanks so much.
Yes, thank you, Kevin.
Appreciate your help.
Thank you, Kevin.
Good luck.
Okay. Any other questions for Kevin? Thanks. Okay, let's move on then.
Sorry about that.
What else do we have? As we got the list of the items that have been administratively approved.
Well, you
Any
wanted
question
to
on any of those? And then
Did you
we're
want to
gonna
do
talk
the lighting
about lighting.
standards?
We're gonna talk about lighting in a minute. Well,
Okay.
yeah, let's just get any questions on the administrative approvals while we're there? Okay,
I
hearing
move
none.
approval.
Okay,
I move approval of the administrative approvals.
all right. Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Those opposed? That motion carries. Let's talk about lighting then for a few minutes if we could.
Sure. Let me pull it up here.
I asked the background on this is I had asked Lewis to look into what our lighting standards are. We seem to get occasionally somebody will have a sign and we start talking about how bright is it, how is it illuminated, and that seems to be a little muddy out there. And so I think we need to kind of come to grips with that. I'm not what Kevin or what Lewis pulled up here is sections of the code from the city code here. And of course, these are what are the standards citywide. Is that right, Lewis?
That's correct.
And the
So
question is then too, do these apply to us or should ours be different? Some of those kinds of questions.
right. So Steve asked me to do some research, like you said, into lighting and how other cities are regulating lighting on graphics. And I thought, well, before we dive too far into what other cities are doing, let's see what we have on the books and see if we're implementing them or enforcing them. So the code section that deals with this is 3377, illumination and special effects. And it's not too long, a couple pages, but a couple ones that I'd like to point out would be A5 right here. So it says flashing signs and bare bulb lamp illumination shall be permitted in only these zoning districts. Of course, we approved them for the downtown district as part of this review board. Each bulb lamp and a flashing sign shall not exceed 15 watts illuminance of 110 lumens. So a lot of this is regulated by lumens. I looked up the definition of a lumen, and a definition of a lumen is SI unit of luminous flux equal to the amount of light emitted per second in a unit solid angle of steradian from a uniform source of 1 candela. Which
there you go.
I was afraid it was going to be something like that.
So it's all clear now. We're on the same page.
It's candle power.
Right. Yes. But exactly what that represents, I don't really know. So if you say 110 lumens, to me, it's kind of fuzzy. But I think the important thing here is this code section was adopted by the city in 2014 and updated in 2017. So it's pretty new code. The city did, I think they worked with a consultant who focuses on this stuff. And these are the kind of regulations they came up with. So I think it's probably safe to say that this is based in pretty accurate science and it's not old code. Non-flashing signs may use bare bulb illumination, but any one bulb lamp shall not exceed 30 watts illuminance of 215 lumens. So that just gives you an idea of kind of the regulations we have regarding illumination of signage. And then we also talk about changeable copy sign, which has been something that we've been dealing with a bit lately downtown. And so the regulations state a sign, B4 is pretty good. A sign utilizing a copy change procedure shall display each individual message a minimum of 8 seconds. This isn't happening downtown and it's not being enforced. We have a lot of videos, a lot of moving things going on. Number 5, and jump in if anyone has a comment anytime. Number 5, the images and messages displayed must be static. And the transition from one static display to the other must be instantaneous to the human eye without any transition effects, including wipes, fades, and other special effects. Once again, that's not being enforced downtown.
You say it is not being enforced?
No, we have, I mean, just driving around from what I've seen, we have lots of LED displays that have video on them. You know, I'm thinking about the one at Nationwide and High, the ones at High and the one by the State House, right? Each automatic automatic changeable copy signs will be equipped with a light sensing device that automatically adjusts the brightness of the sign as ambient light conditions change. I don't know about that one, if we're enforcing that or not. Each sign shall be operated with monitoring and methods in place that shall either turn off the display or show a full black image on the display in the event of a malfunction that affects more than 50% of the sign. And then the last one, no automatic changeable copy sign shall exceed a brightness level of 0.3 foot candles above ambient light, as measured using a lux meter at a preset distance. So they have kind of this, it takes place, at sunset, at least 30 minutes past sunset. The light meter shall be 5 feet above finished grade. The meter shall be aimed toward the center of the automatic changeable copy sign. And then a second reading shall be recorded while the sign is on and not blocked. So, and then if the difference is greater than 0.3 foot candles, the brightness is properly adjusted. Otherwise, the board must be adjusted to comply. And then they provide, the last thing is this table. It gives you the square foot of automatic changeable copy signage, and then how far the measurement should be in linear feet.
Louis, I had a question. The statement about the ambient light and the 0.3 foot candle, does that mean that, let's say, as it gets to be darker or dusk, that lighting level is automatically dimmed so that it is more in unison, that there isn't as much contrast? Is that what that is? Okay, so that you don't have anything too garish, as it's going to be more in keeping with the ambience in the environment.
Yes, and they're supposed to have from my reading of this, they're supposed to have a little censoring device that adjusts it. Now,
okay,
so that's what's on the books citywide now.
So does that apply to downtown?
Well, that's the question. So last year when I took over the downtown commission, Chris Pizzuti contacted me and he said, hey, we have an issue where this isn't being regulated downtown. We've reached out to some of the people who have installed these signs, and they're saying, well, the downtown commission approved it. The downtown commission supersedes code. And then, right. So then the question becomes, well, when the downtown commission approved an LED display, was the downtown commission ignoring this code, or was the downtown commission not aware of the code, or was the downtown commission assuming all code would be enforced? And so that would be the question for this group.
When did you say this went into effect, though? 14? This
went into effect in 2014. Now, so if you look down here, we have the dates of of when this was adopted, 2014, and the one last thing that's on here, it says existing automatic changeable copy sign exception. An automatic changeable copy sign which was lawfully established with no dimming capability shall be considered a non-conforming graphic regarding the requirement for dimming control. But it does not give an exception for the motion and the video.
So don't sign companies have to be licensed? Don't they have to get a sign permit, just like a contractor gets a building permit?
That's correct.
So wouldn't that process regulate this stuff? I mean, we say you can have one of these and you apply it, then we told Tom Morano he can build a house, but he's got to take his drawings to the building department and meet the code.
Right.
Wouldn't the sign company have to take their drawings to the wherever you get a sign permit, and wouldn't these regulations be checked off there?
Well, so that's the question. I mean, this board has a lot of power, this commission. So, for example, you have the power, and since I've been on the staffing the commission, you have made adjustments to parking space sizes, which normally would require variance because it's not conforming to code, but you have the power in that situation to override code. So I think it becomes a matter of, if we want this to be enforced, and I'll have to talk to the city attorney's office and stuff, this is just a preliminary presentation, we could indicate specifically on the COA that all graphics must conform to code section 3377.08 to make that very clear.
Or we may decide that we need different standards downtown, and For example, I'm just thinking if these are some of these things apply to, let's say, a billboard out in the suburbs, right? So we might have a graphic that we're going to see from mostly from 200 or 300 feet. They might have a graphic that's going to be seen from 800 feet. And so we may want a different amount of intensity of light downtown. But the other thing we might be able to do is, depending upon the location, is we might be able to specify a brightness kind of thing too. So
if we have the expertise to do that.
well, but yes, we got to understand what it is. That's exactly.
I mean, I think the starting point is, in order, they should follow the code unless they come into us for, in a sense, for a variance.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right?
I
They
would
should
agree with
do
that.
all of this stuff unless they come in and say, here's a special case, we want to do this instead. And we say,
I,
okay.
I also,
Okay.
oh, I'm sorry, Bob. I'm sorry, what I wanted to mention too, do you remember we have that condition at State and High? I think what is it, that's the
Southwest corner.
southwest corner.
Southwest corner, yeah.
And that would be also a good one to get a feel for what is appropriate there, because like we were saying, what is okay or what is acceptable or what works in the suburbs might be different in a situation where we have this density. And maybe getting a reading on that condition so that we have some understanding of when you do have that proximity next to a building like the Rife Center, what does work in terms of foot candles. So maybe it's just good for our knowledge so that if we are looking at something similar to that, we can say, yes, we feel comfortable following the guidelines, or no, with cases like this, we need to establish something a little different or recommend something different.
I think it might be worth having the city attorney's office take a look at this too. Because I think we need to get a reading on what we really have the ability to do. I mean, if we can't, if we get stuck in one of these ditches again here where, oh gee, it's already up there, we really can't do anything, we may as well know that. And maybe we can twist an arm, to say, hey, let's crank the brightness down or something. The other place, of course, I think is at Spring and High Street on that southwest corner. That is one bright son of a gun. I have to almost put my sunglasses on when I'm going back to my office from the athletic club. So I think we need to kind of just dig into this a little bit. I think it would also be interesting to see what some other cities do in downtowns. For example, is downtown different than the suburbs? What do they do? And by the way, are LEDs, does this thing apply to LEDs, or are these just for billboards? Or I guess they talk about changeable copy, but does that mean LEDs or?
I
Well, it
believe
looks to
so.
me like it was written before LEDs were available. They're talking about 15-watt light bulbs and things like that. It's really based on incandescent. That's why the term lumens is so important, because an LED that's 15 watts is going to put out a lot more lumens, a lot more light than an incandescent bulb that's 15 watts.
Okay.
So the wattage is no longer relevant, but the amount of lumens is the amount of light put out by the light source.
Okay.
And foot candles is the amount of light perceived by somebody receiving the light. That's the difference between those two terms.
Okay. See, this is the stuff that I very frankly do not understand, and I think we need to understand it a little bit, because I think if somebody comes in, we need to be prepared to ask them, and how bright's this thing going to be, and we need to, and whatever standard that is, and then we need to be able to approve it, I think, to a certain basis. Now, maybe if we just approve, say, yeah, you can put a sign on this location, maybe they're subject to this, but we need to know that. So
Right. So what I
By
can
the
do
way,
is,
maybe if it got approved in 2018, and they went ahead and put something up, and this piece of legislation were in place, maybe they're subject to that. So, and then therefore, let's see if they're, you know, they're doing what they need to be doing with respect to this.
right. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll speak to the city attorney's office and I'll dig down. I'll talk to Chris Prizzuti and I'll see if they're using this on LEDs or what they're using for LEDs, if not this. And then we'll move from there. I think crafting our own legislation could be tricky, or at least our own guidelines. That we'd have to get a consultant involved. So I don't know how limited we'd be with that. But I'll do some research and I'll get back to you next month then.
Well, we do have things that we have standards, for example. It's not really part of legislation.
Right.
But we have guidelines, for example, design guidelines. This could be part of our design guideline. And frankly, maybe we just begin to approve things if it meets our guidelines, and if it doesn't, it's not appropriate. So.
But at the moment, there's a set of standards here that we can refer to.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us have, I don't know, how do we say somebody comes in, they want to put a sign up? How do we say,
right,
well, don't follow this standard, make it this instead, when
right.
I'm not sure any of us have the ability to do that.
Right.
But I think this is a good starting point. I think at the very least, we could reference this and say, in our approval, make sure you meet the code.
Yeah.
And I will say, Chris Prizzuti did say when I spoke to him, he said, you know, unless the commission is specifically saying they do not have to follow these guidelines, that was his question for me. Are they saying they don't have to follow these guidelines? And I said, I don't believe so. He said, well, if that's the case, they should probably follow the guidelines.
Well, these aren't guidelines, it's the code, right?
I'm not
code. I misspoke. Yes,
I'm not
code.
Sure that
that's what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure we don't want to. I think we just need to look into this so we really understand what's going on. However, I could see that we actually say we want our lights downtown a little less bright than what we have in this in these standards. So, okay. And now here's another thing. And you might talk to Kevin Wheeler again, Lewis. He may, because he's looking around he may have come across some place. He mentioned today. I can't remember, Denver or Austin or something. He may have run into some place where they have lighting standards, and they've spent time on this, and they've got a good thought on something. It'd be worth an ask, and so good. Okay, thank you. I think that's a good start on this. I appreciate everybody looking at this stuff. Is there any other business? Any old business? Any new business?
That's it.
Everybody all set? Yeah, good to see everybody. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate your time today. Have a good
day.
Bye. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Janet, go ahead.
Oh, I just said goodbye. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.